Hi, this time I'm going to talk about the Elric Saga, Elric of Melniboné. For those of you that do not know, Elric is one of the cornerstones in sword and sorcery. This is old school. This is the origin, the influence of many modern things. If you have ever seen a hero with white long hair that is quite sorcerous, that usually relies either on some sort of magic or potions or has some sort of decadent origin to him, that's Elric of Melniboné. So, Druid's Dourden, white hair, brooding, with a certain melancholy, coming from a species, no rather a race of the elves, of decadence and degeneracy. Geralt from The Witcher, white hair, weird eyes, drinks potions. Dark Schneider, even Dark Schneider. All of those heroes from different books, games, anime, manga, they all took inspiration from Elric. I'm going to show you a couple of the books that contain what I would call the core story of Elric. I'm going to see if I can get this into focus without the video getting too choppy. You can see it here. And this is the second book. Careful now. Okay, hopefully the video will turn out fine. So, who is this guy? His adventures are logically part of the Elric Saga, but this is part of a grander saga still, the Eternal Champion Saga. What is the Eternal Champion? He is an entity that manifests itself across the multiverse through different individuals. They are all exceptional, remarkable, heroes or anti-heroes. They are the best when it comes to fighting, sometimes, like in the case of Elric, sorcery. They are incredible. I also have to wonder if in tabletop role-playing games, the archetype, or some could say the stereotype of the spellcaster, like the elf that is good at combat, well, decent in combat, in old school Dungeons and Dragons, but also when it comes to casting spells, you have to wonder if some influence was taken from Elric, because Elric is really good at fighting, but he's also a master of casting spells, but it is by no means a perfect character. Elric suffers from various weaknesses. We will talk about those in a few moments. So Elric is one of these manifestations of the Eternal Champion. The Eternal Champion is a multiplicity of champions, and he is one of them. But for whatever reason, perhaps through some sort of chaos-related error, Elric has been born as an unhealthy, a sickly albino. He is constantly under some sort of pain or disease, some sort of thing that keeps him from performing to his full potential most of the time. He keeps this under control by taking herbs, teas that help him, they heal him to a certain extent. When Elric is in full health, let's put it like that, he is amazing, a master of sword and sorcery. He would be the most overpowered character in tabletop role-playing games. Someone that gathers the best in terms of being the fighter and the wizard at the same time. No drawbacks. However, this doesn't last for long. Unlike Superman, that suffers from the effects of the kryptonite, Elric was born with the kryptonite, and he relies on those special medicines to keep him safe, healthy. Just in case, because there are some deep themes or subjects I really must apply this disclaimer so YouTube doesn't take down this video. YouTube, this is all science fiction. Okay, moving on. Some could say fantasy, right? Fantasy, but just in case, science fiction. That's the key term. Okay. This review will contain slight spoilers. Or rather, this video, where it's not basically a review, it's just some general thoughts about the character. Maybe you could say it's a sort of like a review. I'll leave that to your discernment, to your judgment. So, okay. Elric, later on, quite early in the book, I would say, or rather quite early in the first story, he comes upon this magical blade, Stormbringer. This blade steals souls, it drinks souls. Legacy of Kain, remember? The vampire video game, white hair with soul river that steals souls. They always rip off from Elric. Okay, so Elric, well, in that case it was Dennis Diac, so it doesn't surprise me, you know, the troublesome history related to that guy. So in the case of Elric, as long as he is either nourished by those teas, those herbs, as long as he is nourished by the souls that he steals through, or devours through Stormbringer, he is able to perform admirably. Flawless, supernaturally so. He is the most powerful hero in classic sword and sorcery ever. Not a single other hero, neither Conan, neither Fafhrd, they cannot match him. Elric, by himself, is able to take on an entire city. The way that his battles proceed, the way that they are described, it's almost as if Elric is phasing in and out. He moves so fast, it looks as if he moves with anime speed and strength. Metal, stone, anything is cut asunder through the blade of Stormbringer as if it were butter, like butter melting. Extremely powerful character. Just to give you a few more details about the books, they are quite beautiful. They come with maps. But once again, I hope this video doesn't get too choppy. Here goes. You can track the progress of Elric's journeys in that map, and they also come with very beautiful illustrations. Not many of them, some black and white illustrations. Let me see if I can find a good looking illustration. You also have some color plates, that's how you call it, or color illustrations. Here is a black and white illustration of Elric. Once again, here goes. And here is a color plate. Some of them I do not like too much. For example, this one, it looks a bit, how would you say, a bit derpy or dorky. Well, I guess it's kind of fine, but the face, there's something about the face that I don't like. Like, there, you know, like... This one reminds me a bit of Vampire Hunter D in the Yoshitaka Amano style. The one above. And I think this is my favorite one from this book because it shows you everything about Elric's world, the chaos, the gods, the deities. The elemental powers. A lot of you have already probably noticed that Elric is also the source of inspiration for everything chaos related in Warhammer. You know how Games Workshop pretty much steals from many properties. Dune, Elric is one of the properties where they steal from. the sign of chaos, the gods of chaos, all of that. It's all Elric. Okay, let's continue. Because Elric is sickly, that's just one of his flaws. The other flaw is that he comes from the... I don't know if I should call it a species or a race, because it seems to be like a primordial race of mankind, of the human species. But you could also consider it a species. There are some strange things about it. Once again, it's up to you. His race has decayed. They have degenerated. Once they had glorious kingdoms, but through many things that have to do with the major spoilers, they fell into religion. They worship the gods of chaos. One in particular, above all, they take drugs. They are morally bankrupt. They are the sort of people that think about themselves first. For example, maybe I think that's one of the scary things of the Melniboné race. They remind us of the lowest ends of humanity in real life. For example, in real life, you have people that worship corpses still, even in this current day and age. They worship corpses. You know exactly what I am talking about. They fall under the dogma and doctrine of religion. They are controlled, put to sleep, controlled by the priests. Oh, this Messiah or this prophet did this and that because someone from our religion wrote it in the past. Now you need to follow his example. They will never use what you would refer to as God, because God is a Proto-Germanic word. It has nothing to do with any religion whatsoever. God is a Proto-Germanic word that encompasses everything. And yet they need the messiahs, the prophets in science fiction to manipulate people. They cannot write a story about God because it would be ridiculous. You would say, you know everything about God. No, but he is the son of God. So follow his example, suffer, be poor, be meek, and so forth with any prophet, any messiah. So you can see the decadence of the Melniboné race, Melnibonians. Other cases, even in current times, people see so many bad individuals or groups, but because they were nice to them, or because they acted friendly or gently to them, or because they are within their political faction, their religious faction, then it's okay. It's okay because they were nice to me. It's okay. So, or some that think that they are outside. They think they are outside of the decadence, but they are plunged within it. They have not escaped from an ideological perspective. Their minds are not free. And it usually has a repercussion on their bodies. So this also applies in the case of the Melniboné race. They have decayed once they were perfect, perhaps warriors, scholars, wizards, and now they spend their days wasting away. Some of them become addicted to drugs and they just spend their time smoking and drinking and lounging, and they have also some very horrifying customs. It is quite common for them, for example, to, let's say, assault members of the opposite race, but really not in the wokester sort of way. No, I mean physical, actual jump on them way. Or they torture a lot, to the point that it is very common. In one of the first scenes, Elric is witnessing, or rather carrying out a torture session. That is, he gives the commands because he is actually the emperor of the Melniboné race. He is the supreme ruler. And you see how this torture is happening because of his orders, and he is very calmly, almost like in the way that they say Blood Tepes did, drinking and eating, and as if it were just such a common thing. I guess when it comes to war, Elric is quite accustomed to that and considers it a necessity. But you still see that struggle of Elric in trying to fight this decadence. Many of the other Melnibonians see him as an odd duck, as someone that is too... He goes against the norm. So many things in current times have been called or labeled as normal, natural, good, and they are not. And yet you mentioned something about natural things, approaching nature, having harmony between the structures of man and nature, and they're like, oh, you're very bleak and pessimistic. We have survived like that for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Thousands of years, I would say. Take a look at Rome. When it was at its highest point, the strongest legionnaires, and Rome has so many bad things about it, don't get me wrong, starting from its origin. Take a look at how they populated Rome. And a lot of people are lazy. I know that a lot of you are not going to look through these things, but others that are intelligent are going to research this. But in Rome, the healthiest legionnaires, excuse me, they were taken from the farms, from the fields. They were the greatest. But if someone from the city, a sickly person from the city, which is usually the case, wanted to be a part of the legionnaires, they had to be carefully inspected and trained. If they had some potential, they had to be rigorously trained. So you see this sort of decadence happening again in the Melniboné people. They are a shadow of their former selves. Some of them still are the best. True elite, not in the sense of corrupt elite, true elite in their skills, in their abilities, including Elric. But Elric is constantly seeking to be merciful, despite their merciless attitude or severity, and that's his flaw. Many times throughout all of the stories, Elric gets tricked, almost killed. He suffers horrifying defeats. Some people die because of his terrible choices when he decided to be merciful to someone that did not deserve that mercy. There are many people that do not deserve mercy, and there are some others that deserve your mercy. You need to be balanced in that approach. No one said it's going to be easy. And Elric lost so many things because he spared someone, or he didn't think bad of someone. So yes, that's part of the tragedy of Elric. Now, in the stylistic sense, could you say that in the style of the author, Michael Moorcock, the most interesting thing to me about the Elric saga is the cosmology. Not so much the characters. There are some fascinating characters. Not so much certain sites, and there are some wondrous sites indeed. But the cosmology itself and the balance between law and chaos, that is truly fascinating. And it has not been recreated in other media like Warhammer, be it Warhammer Fantasy or Warhammer 40k, or in its current presentation of Age of Sigmar. They still miss the point of chaos and order. In the best of moments, there are some highlights where they touch upon that ripped off section of Michael Moorcock's cosmology of law and chaos, but let me tell you how. In the best of cases, in the true Elric essence, law and chaos are two forces that are just that, opposing forces, and if one overwhelms the other, it will end in catastrophe. This has been explored in so many fantasy and fictional stories. If chaos takes over, Like in the case of Elric, the forces of chaos are taking over the world. If chaos takes over, there will be no order whatsoever. That is, not even the shapes. Take a look at the shape of my body, of the books behind me, of yourself, your computer, you have squares, circles, triangles, variations. None of that would be consistent. Everything would be in a constant state of flux, to the point that there is this travesty of a catastrophe of colors and shapes with no form whatsoever. That's the thing that you usually see in, for example, in Warhammer, the warp stones, and in any other fantasy. This was taken from the Elric Saga. Forces so chaotic that if you were to approach them without the necessary protections in terms of spells or artifacts or some substance, your body would be deformed immediately. We are talking about people that were trying to spy on the forces of chaos, and the very act turned their bodies into a nightmarish thing. A disaster of melanoma. And what's the phobia that some people mention that you have, like, you don't like it when you see many geometrical figures together? Tryptophobia? I think that's the correct, right? You end up like that. The most grossest thing imaginable, with tentacles and things and vermin and crawling out of your body. You deform into that. And the body, it's the world itself in this science fiction, is also deformed, affected by that. We are not even talking about current things we are experiencing of certain lands. This is science fiction. This is all science fiction about burned areas. We are talking about mountains, forests, plains that have become seas. Blackish, purplish, greenish, yellowish seas of pure deformity, where something could actually become alive. When the trees, the rocks, they take a different life, chaotic, monstrous, aberrant, where just walking on the grass could be your end. You could say it's a certain radioactive nightmare, perhaps. This is the world of Elric. Just take a look at this cover once again. Careful now. We don't want the video to get choppy. That greenish sky and clouds and structures, they are not like a metaphor or a visual poetry of the world of Elric. That's literally how the world starts to become. So it is insane, it is crazy. And that's what's so fascinating about Elric. Like I said, the forces of chaos, they are constantly fighting against the forces of order. If order were to take over, nothing would advance. There would be no growth. Everything would be a statue, crystallized in time, in perfect order. We're talking about rivers that perhaps do not flow. Everything is in perfect order. No chaos whatsoever to allow growth. So it's all about that balance, and that's what fascinates me so much. Some of the stories of Elric are very strambotic. Sometimes you have this cool, dark, sword and sorcery vibe. And then it feels like something out of the dying earth, with some comical, absurd things. Some of the places and people that Elric meets up with, they look like a parody of our real world. In fact, some people from our real world actually make it into Elric's world. It's very strange. It's a journey across space and time. In other stories, Elric actually comes into our world for a moment. So yes, it's very, it's really a trippy journey overall. If you want to know the full story, as I have mentioned, these are the two books that you want to get. From the editorial, what's the, Saga Press. The publisher, Saga Press. There are some other books. There is actually a third volume, But I do not consider those stories like the main part of the Elric saga. They are more like side stories. And how can you tell this? Because in these stories that encompass everything about the beginning and the end of the Elric saga, none of the other side characters make an important appearance or contribution. Some of them do not appear at all. And that's why I want to later on purchase those books, because I haven't read all of the Elric stories. I wonder what sort of explanation they give. There are other notable characters in Elric's saga, and a lot of them end up killed because of Elric's actions directly or indirectly. Stormbringer, his sword, becomes really hungry. And sometimes you cannot control that sword. We are talking of someone that could be walking next to you, and because the sword is thirsty, he suddenly stabs you. He is controlled, pulled by the sword, and sometimes his own inner darkness. Sometimes Elric has to carry out certain things, and he takes almost like a... Yes, sacrifices need to be made, like a how would you call it in emergency situations when you're trying to save someone's life? A triage? Yes, I think that's the correct term. When you can only save the life of someone else, but because of that, many others could perish because they are about to experience certain death. It is not certain, but almost. But you have this person that you can save. Those are the choices, and sometimes Elric ends up saving himself. Not exactly selfless in a lot of situations. He takes a look at the situation. They are probably gunners. Elric is not going to risk his life. He still has that Melniboné blood. He is not very altruistic. He ends up saving himself instead. So that's the sort of character. Very flawed and complex. He has his patron. This could be considered somewhat of a spoiler, but this is famous of Elric, the Ariok, blood and souls for my god Ariok. Like instead of Khorne from Warhammer Fantasy, it's Ariok. He's a powerful demon lord, because Elric, again, because of his own stupidity, he got cornered. He had to place himself as the servant of this demon, his god Ariok. So he is not exactly free as well. Sometimes he has to carry out the tasks imposed upon him by Ariok. You could say that the warlock character from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, in my Ravenhawk campaign, how Marcus has this demonic patron constantly talking to him, not in the kindest of ways. That's the same relationship Elric has with Ariok. And he sometimes has to work together with the forces of chaos, with the forces of order. Mostly with order, because like I said, chaos is taking over. You need that balance of chaos and order. The forces of order, Elric is kind of like, don't try to butter me up. I am not like buddy, chummy with you. I am just working with you because I know that you can stop chaos, but the moment chaos is defeated, maybe I will have to fight you as well. Very tragic character. Elric is just trying to, despite all of his flaws, he's trying to do his best to achieve some sort of order or balance. And even when he later on meets with agents of balance, he still understands that that balance perhaps may not be the balance that he is searching for. Maybe there is something else. And that really gets you deep into thought. What is this all about? Existence, life. Who is the creator? Who is the creator of the creator? What's the origin? What's the purpose? Why do we have to fight? Is it survival? Is it some more nefarious plan, someone pulling the strings? All of that is explored in the Elric saga. And the most terrifying question of all, maybe you end up meeting with an entity, a being, that has existed for many aeons. That entity could have witnessed the birth and the destruction of many worlds, many realms. And maybe you want to ask that entity, tell me, what is this all about? What is the secret of life, the purpose of life, of existence? Why is there order? Why is there chaos? Why is it so difficult for there to be some sort of balance? Who came up with all of this? Something just... Was everything just eternal? Like the eternal champion? Was that always the case? And perhaps these entities that have witnessed the destruction, the birth of countless worlds, dimensions, perhaps they won't be able to answer. Perhaps they will say something like, well, I don't know. If you find out eventually, please let me know, okay? I'm in the same boat as you. I am immortal. I have these many powers, but I am in the same boat as you when it comes to the philosophy of the situation. Because this is not about blind faith. This is about actually getting to the truth. When it comes to the situations that Elric experiences, this is it's very fun. Going away from the philosophical aspect, there are many fun moments. The situations are peak in sword and sorcery. Now that so many video games, anime, manga, etc., books, movies, they have taken example from the Elric Saga, you may kind of like predict certain things, identify certain things, but for the most part it is still quite enjoyable. Now, don't get these stories wrong. You may be thinking that there are certain stereotypes in the early stories, but later on those stereotypes are broken, so it's mostly related to a particular individual in the world, or perhaps a way that a certain individual was raised within a certain site. Because some of you may be reading the first story and you see these like, let's say, 2 common damsel in distress moments, and you could be thinking, oh, that's, I can't believe it, because, well, first of all, remember, I am no wokester. We already understand that man is a lot more powerful in terms of aggressiveness and physical strength when compared to women. You take the place in the world that is more characteristic of having strong, hearty men, and you compare it with the strongest and heartiest of women. You can look here in YouTube fights between men and women in mixed martial arts and such. And there are some horrifying results. So don't get me wrong, but like I said, throughout the stories you will see some women that are very helpless, some others that are extremely capable warriors. So don't feel disheartened if you start to read these stories and, oh my god, she's going to pass out again, you know. No, but then you find another woman that doesn't do that. That's because they, like I said, different training, different upbringing. They are still not comparable to the warriors, the male warriors, but they can in some cases match them, relying of course on exploiting weaknesses. You're not going to be fighting brute force against someone that matches you or overcomes you in brute force. Typical strategies and tactics in combat. But overall, I highly recommend that you check out the Elric Saga. I feel as if I am missing something. The Gods of Chaos, the balance, the cosmology. I almost know it. I am almost certain that I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to be like, oh, I forgot to mention this. But that speaks about the richness of the setting itself. Well, just like an interesting thing, in a comic book there is actually an Elric Conan crossover. Perhaps... no, that's... I was forgetting about this because I also talked about that in a stream that I had a few weeks ago with Rick, Tyler, and Mr. Max. In the case of Elric, he is not exactly becoming more powerful. You feel as if he has already reached a certain pinnacle, but because of his rejection of his own people, you will see some very... You have to see it for yourself. But let's say that he is not exactly hesitant when it comes to sacrificing his connection or bond with others. In that rejection, I think that Elric has forgotten many things about his legacy. So when he's about to cast some powerful spells, you can see this in the Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game, all of those tables to see the effects of the spells. Something could go quite wrong, something could go in a very exceptional, unexpected way. Elric casts those spells, but he first has to remember them. There are some moments of desperation when he's about to die and he's trying to reach out to the recesses, to the corners of his mind and trying to pull that spell from oblivion, and oh, I remember it now. The spell is, and he starts to cast it either mentally or verbally, and some creature is summoned to assist him. He makes so many bargains and pacts throughout the saga. He calls upon different beings. Some of them are friendly, most of them are not. They even threaten him. If you call me again, this is going to happen, you know? So this is sorcery in its darkest expression. And really, he's able to take on so many things through sword and sorcery. He is definitely one of the iconic characters of that. Just by wielding Stormbringer alone, and Stormbringer is so vital to the entire plot, that sword is alive. When he is wielding it in perfect health, he is able to take on everything, as long as he doesn't fall into his error of, oh, I'm going to try to be merciful in order to not to degenerate or decay like my people, you know? As long as he doesn't fall into that error, he is unstoppable. And when he casts his sorcery, if he wanted to, you could pretty much tell that Elric could decimate entire continents just by unleashing his sorcery recklessly. If there is a lesson to be taken from Elric, is the entire fate of the Melnibonians. Just take a look at any of the major civilizations in history. They all fall when decadence and degeneracy takes over. You must understand that the people that are pushing degeneracy, decadence, not only on the wokester side, but also on those traditions of imprisonment, such as religion, political factions, they do not care about a legacy, they care about the now, their present moment. They do not care about the future of the species. They just want to have fun in the present. And according to their retrograde, backward ideals. And this applies to all of the factions, to all of the political sides. That is not true progress. You are chained to things that led to the downfall of many people in the past. Someone in a comment, I don't remember the video, but this is not me. Perhaps it's a famous quote from someone else, right? He said, "The past shouldn't be wielded as a weapon, but understood in order to avoid mistakes." That's what the Elric saga is all about. And remember that sometimes history is his story. It is very easy for those that write the his story books to manipulate everything. If they wanted to, in science fiction, they could erase entire centuries of history and technological advancements. Because there could be people that have certain technology in science fiction that eliminated those that had that same level of technology, hid that technology away, and started to disclose it little by little, according to their whims, according to their manipulation. And those things can be explored from a more universal perspective in the battle between order and chaos in the Elric saga. Thank you for watching this video. I would love to know your thoughts and comments. That is, I am confident that most of my viewers, not all of them, but most of my viewers are critical thinkers and intelligent. A lot, I know, not all of them, but I trust that you are watching this video, you know what is going on. So let me know your thoughts on the Elric Saga. Have you read it? Do you plan to read it? Do you find it interesting? Perhaps boring? Who knows? Thank you as always for your questions, your comments, and thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. And remember, roleplay solves everything. Thank you and see you later.